Before starting this video, I do want to give a shout out to my patrons that support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you if you want to look at the Patreon link down below. So with that out of the way, let's get into this week's video. What's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on PubStomp MTG. Glad to have you here. Today we have another commander team up with Zurgo and Dragonlord Ojutai. At first glance, I was not really interested in this commander pairing because I felt like it was kind of generic. I mean, looking at it at first I was like, it looks okay, but after reading it more and more, I actually got more excited about it and different possibilities this commander could have with the deck right here. So let's go over Zurgo and Ojutai. What does it do? So it is the Jeskai commander. It has flying and it does have haste. Zurgo and Ojutai have Hexproof as long as they enter the battlefield this turn, and whenever one or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. You may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand. So again, going to my initial thoughts, I thought it was kind of weird. Why would you want to bring your dragons back to your hand? But then I did think of another strategy that actually works very well with this card right here, and that is Sneak Attack. So with Sneak Attack, it is a 4-mana enchantment. It has pay a red. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. And of course, what's really great about Zurgo and Ojutai, it has that great ability of you may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand if you dealt combat damage to a player or a battle. So with this commander pairing, we're definitely going to be focusing on a little bit of a sneak attack theme right here. And of course, this is going to be dragon tribal because we can only return dragons to our hand. We can't return anything else. Luckily, our commander is a dragon as well, so if we do need to, we can remove our commander to put it back into our hand just in case if we don't want it to get removed. And plus, it's nice for the commander tax as well. So we do have other various ways of putting dragons onto the battlefield. We don't just have sneak attack, we also do have some other great cards right here. I mean, of course, I would have to say Sneak Attack is definitely the best option out of this group because it's so efficient for what it does for 4 mana and you only pay 1. But if I did have to name a couple options, I would name Ilharg the Razeboar. This is an excellent option for Sneak Attack because you don't actually have to sacrifice the creatures, they actually just return to your hand. But the big problem about Ilharg is you do have to attack with Ilharg in order to get a Sneak Attack trigger to have another dragon enter the battlefield. So that's the option right there. However, another great option we do have is Perforos Bronze Blooded. For 5 mana, we do have a legendary enchantment creature, God. It is indestructible, so that's pretty nice right there. And other creatures you control have haste, period. You don't have to worry about your dragons having summoning sickness when they enter the battlefield. And on top of that, you can pay 3 mana to put a red creature or an artifact creature on the battlefield. Obviously, you have to sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step, but because of our commander, we can just have it return to our hand instead of it dying. So these sneak attack options are great, but unfortunately, most of them might get sacrificed if our commander is not on the battlefield, so we do have a little bit of a blink strategy in here. So the big reason why I decided to go with a little bit of a blink strategy in this deck right here is mainly because if we don't have our commander on the battlefield, we want a way to have our creatures stay on the battlefield and reuse their enter the battlefield triggers. There's going to be a lot of dragons that have enter the battlefield triggers that are absolutely going to be excellent. So first up, I do have some instant speed options. We want to protect our creatures in any way possible, whether our creatures are sneak attacked in and they're having that sacrifice on the stack, we could flicker them with Ghostly Flicker and Eerie Interlude. Also on top of that, if our opponent has a removal spell, we could also use that to protect our creatures as well. We do have a lot of cantrips like these so that we can protect our creatures, and on top of that, use their ETBs. Another way we could use our ETBs and flickering is by having constant threats like Thassa's Deep Dwelling and Teleportation Circle, essentially doing the same thing. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target creature you control. If it's Teleportation Circle, also an artifact, then you return that creature to the battlefield under your control. Also on top of that, we want to be connecting with our dragons at all times so that we can put them back into our hand, or if we can flicker them. So a great way we could do that is by tapping down other creatures that our opponents control so that we can swing uncontested. I mean, I know it's sometimes hard to block a dragon, but honestly, if there's some flying creatures in the air, we could definitely use Thassa's ability to tap them down for sure. However, I do want to move on to my favorite blink card, and that is Displacerkin. I've been so impressed with this card. Honestly, it's absolutely incredible how crazy this card is, honestly. But it does have a crazy ability. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 non-target, non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So any non-creature spell, whether it's artifacts, enchantments, instants, or sorceries, absolutely crazy right here. We could blink our creatures so much just with cantrips alone, and plus on top of that, it doesn't protect itself whenever you play a cantrip. It's almost like counteracting somebody's removal in a way. So honestly, this is absolutely an insane card, one of my favorite cards that has come out in recent years in my opinion. However, let's go to the main event. We're going to be talking about dragons. So when thinking of dragons, I first thought about the ETBs that dragons do have. So the first one I did think about was Bogart and Hellkite. It does have flash and flying, and when it enters the battlefield, it'll deal 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. So what's really great about this ability and a lot of abilities with ETBs in this deck is we're going to flicker our dragons, or we're going to return them back to our hand so that we can sneak attack them back out. So cards like this will definitely input the damage for sure. Also, I did want to mention Red Dragon. It just has a simple ETB of dealing 4 damage to each opponent. Pretty simple right here. Of course, we're going to be flipping back and forth with him, so we're going to be dealing a lot of damage to our opponents that way. However, if we want to get some great card advantage, Nullspine Dragon is your guy right here. It does have when it enters the battlefield, you may discard your hand and then you draw cards equal to the damage dealt to target opponent this turn. This is absolutely going to be beautiful in the deck because we could just return it back to our hand and then we could repeat that, drawing so much cards off of him. Definitely a must include if I've ever seen one in my life with Dragon Tribal for sure. I also did want to focus on dragons that have great effects when they're dealing combat damage. So I did think of the Battle for Baldur's Gate dragons that came out recently with Ancient Copper Dragon, Ancient Gold Dragon, and Ancient Silver Dragon. I know these dragons are a little harder to find, but they just have such great effects, whether you're getting treasure tokens, whether you're getting a big board presence, and also getting some card advantage. These are absolutely excellent in any dragon deck for sure. Another dragon that absolutely has a game-ending effect would be Udvara Hellkite. For 8 mana, we do have a flying dragon. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, you put a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So say for example, you're swinging in with 5 dragons. You're going to get 5 dragons on top of that have 6/6 bodies. For 8 mana, you're definitely getting your money's worth with this card for sure. So as you can see, dragons are coming in and out all the time. We definitely want to take advantage of that with ETB damage. So of course we got to add cards like Dragon Tempest and Scourge of Valkis. Both of these essentially have the same ability of whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. These definitely can increase the damage input to your opponents. However, nothing compares to Terror of the Peaks, especially when we have huge dragons entering the battlefield. Essentially, when another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. There are absolutely so many dragons in this deck that have huge power. We're going to be taking advantage of that, especially when creatures are entering the battlefield, flickering back and forth, and coming to our hand and going back onto the battlefield with sneak attack. This card could definitely end games for sure. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Zurgo and Ojutai. Again, when I first read this commander, I wasn't really all impressed in my opinion. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of like returning creatures to my hand, but the more I realized that, the more I thought about all the great strategies you could come up with Zurgo and Ojutai, especially with sneak attack. With this commander right here, you could take advantage of so many different various options of ETBs, especially when dragons are entering the battlefield, coming back into your hand, and then repeating the process, especially with sneak attack. However, let me know down below, what do you think of this commander right here, especially being in Jeskai. I know Jeskai doesn't have a lot of support with dragons. I mean, red is definitely the support for dragons, but we don't really see that color combination with dragons. So again, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.